Good morning, brand DIYers. It is Mark here on a Friday morning, kind of gray and blah in Victoria, but it's the end of the week and I'm stoked about that. We made it through our very first week of the new year, 2021. Thank freaking God. Um, and I have got a very interesting live stream idea for you today to finish off the week. And I think you're going to like this one because no matter how big or small your business, no matter if you're a creative or if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a strategy specialist, this topic has something for you. I want to talk to you today about the brand gap. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, um, watch Mad Men. Watch Mad Men. All of us have seen Mad Men, and one of the things that you learn about Mad Men right at the very beginning is that there's two types of people. There are the creatives, and there are the suits. And the suits, it's a pejorative term, and that's a fancy 10-gallon sort of word for guys who carry briefcases around and don't think very much. It's not a nice term, at least as far as the creatives use it. So the proper term is account service people. So there's creatives and suits. And creatives and suits, if you've ever worked in an ad agency, is a very familiar concept. And it's not necessarily a good thing. So, in most ad agencies, like in Mad Men, the creatives represent the brand and the suits represent strategy. Brand, strategy. And therein lies the gap. Now, what makes it interesting, where does the gap come from? Well, for a start, let's take a look at the average ad agency. If you've got a larger ad agency, you've got the creatives sitting on different floors than the suits. And in almost every ad agency that I worked at, the creatives worked on a higher floor than the suits. What does that tell you? Read between the lines. So right away, you've got a bit of hostility and aggro and hurt feelings happening. Now, it doesn't help when you start to think about what the creatives are responsible for and what the suits are responsible for, because you start to see that they do not work together. In fact, a lot of the times, they're separate tribes. So it was the suits' accepted job to do the left brain thinking in most ad agencies. That is to provide analytical, logical, linear, concrete, numerical, verbal thinking. The sort of stuff that you write in a Word document or on an Excel spreadsheet. On the other side, you've got the creatives who favored right brain thinking. That is intuitive, emotional, spatial, verbal, not verbal, physical, visual, and a lot of the times not verbal. It's a lot easier to express strategy in a document and write it down in cold, hard, logical ways. Creativity, a lot of the times it's non-verbal, even if they use words in the ads themselves or in the communication, but it's hard to verbalize why. So you've got creatives on the one side feeling a bit put upon because they can't quite explain why they did what they did, only that it's brilliant. And on the other side, you've got the suits who have got the strategy all mapped out in cold, hard, linear way, logical way, and they look at the finished work and they go, wait a minute, that doesn't look at all like this Word document or this Excel spreadsheet. I don't like it. And most of the time, the left brain doesn't know what the right brain is doing, or vice versa. And so the two halves of the brain, in this case, the suits and the creatives, are almost constantly at odds. And this is, writ short, the brand gap. Now, you're probably laughing because I'm describing Mad Men here, or the ad agencies that I worked for, and I've worked in virtually every ad agency I ever worked for, this was the case, and I know that it's still the case. However, you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I'm a brand DIYer. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have any creatives working for me. I bring in freelancers off of Upwork or Fiverr or 99 Designs, or I call the website designer down the street for help if I need them. Well, think again. It is exactly the same for you. So let me paint a scenario for you and tell me if you have lived this scenario. All right. You are a proprietor of a small business, a startup, a new tech company, and you brief a designer to create some Facebook ads for you, or even simpler, to do the look and feel of your website. Okay? Now you have the idea of what your website should be. All you want this designer to do is to make it look right. I can virtually guarantee that along this path, there is going to be frustration happening because I have seen it again and again and again. So for you, you think that the designer totally gets what you're asking them to do, right? But they come back to you with something that's totally lame or way off base or just insane. Don't these people have freaking ears? Don't they know what you want? Are they nuts? How could they possibly get it so wrong? Well, I can tell you what's happening at the same time on the other side of the table. On the other side of the table, the creative is thinking that, why do I even bother? This douchebag is just telling me what to do anyway. They don't want me to add any sort of thing, any plus to the equation. They just want me to do what they're telling me to do. And then they're yelling at me because I did what they wanted me to do, and they said it's not creative. Or they think that any sort of contribution that I made is totally off base. So you know what? I'm just gonna cover my head, cover my ears. I'm gonna do whatever you want. And then after I collect the money, I'm not going to put your website in my portfolio. In fact, like a stinking fish on the counter, I'm going to wrap it in a newspaper and try to get rid of the damn thing as quickly as possible and move on to the next project. Does that sound familiar? If you are the average proprietor or entrepreneur, it should sound familiar because I can virtually guarantee that you have lived a scenario like that probably more than once, whether it comes to designing your business cards, your website, your advertising, the t-shirt for the charity run you're doing. Doesn't matter. As long as you've got a right brain and a left brain working, most of the time they aren't working together and you have a brand gap. Now, I'm not here to just tell you something that you already know. I'm here to help you. So I have run a number of creative departments, big creative departments. I have also worked directly with my fair share of clients where I'm the creative department. And I have two ideas for you. Actually more. A couple of ideas plus one on how you, as a brand DIYer, can tighten up the brand gap. All right? So here's the first one. The first one is to do a proper brief for the work. Now, you come back to me and you say, well, that's a stupid idea. Of course we do a brief for the work. We tell the designer exactly what we want to have on the website. No, you're missing the point. You're telling the designer what to do. The designer is looking at you going, why do you need me? You already know what to do. What's the point of me here? All you need is basically some guy who knows how to use a template, fill in the right colors, and boom, there you go. Totally lame, but it's exactly what you want. This is different. This is a brief that actually harnesses the designer's creativity and at the same time gives you what you want. So the first question in the brief that you want to answer, what job does the communication have to do? Not what does the communication have to say, what job does the communication have to do? Website. You're designing a website. I assume that somebody didn't find your website out of the blue. Your website is the result of a customer journey. People have heard about you, and then they get to the website, and you have to reinforce that everything they believe about you is in fact true, that you really are that great. So that leads me right away to a sidebar. What journey has the customer been on? What have they seen before? What have they heard before? What thoughts do you need to reinforce? Do you see where this is different from just tell them what the product does and how much it costs? Way different. Okay? What does the communication have to do? Not what does it have to say. Second part of the brief. Who else is doing the same kind of thing as you, your competitors? What are they saying? And why are they saying that? You know why this is important? The designer takes your website, 3 competitor websites, and looks at them and goes, oh man, these guys are all saying the same thing. You know, by tweaking it a little bit and sticking a little bit closer to the consumer, what they're looking for, and I'm going to get to that in a second, we can make you look completely different and better. But they can't say that unless they've looked at the competition. And you've looked at the competition, you've had a good hard look and said, you know, this guy's saying they're green, this guy's saying they're blue, this guy's saying they're red. Why do we say that? Let's say we're yellow, so at least we stand out. All right, there's a bit of progress. Now, what do you want the work to say? That's a bad thing. I just mentioned that. Instead, try this. How do you want the consumer to feel after they've seen your communication? Not what do you want to say, but how do you want your audience to feel? So when they go to your website and they read the homepage from top to bottom, what do you want them to feel? Oh, this is a simple solution. Geez, these are nice guys. Wow, these guys must be really smart. Oh, finally somebody who understands me. Those are all different things that the consumer could feel. But you notice I'm not telling you what to say, because if you tell the designer, just tell them this, you're taking their job away. Next, who's the consumer? I want my consumer to feel happy or at ease. Okay, is that a 45-year-old man who is working downtown? Or is it a 16-year-old boy who is working at the gas station? Who do you want to make feel happy? Because I can tell you, those two people feel happy about very different things. So you have to define who it is that you're talking to. And don't just say, I want a 45-year-old man. Say, I want Bob. Bob's a 45-year-old guy. He works downtown in a dead-end job. He wishes that he could get out and start his own business, but he hasn't had the courage to because, well, he's got a family to support. And, you know, he thinks that life is passing him by, and his friends are getting fired one after the other because of the recession, and he thinks he's going to be next, so he has to make a move, but he's looking for some software that's going to support him and wrap its arms around him and make him feel happy that he's making the right decision to go out on his own. Do you see the difference between that and Bob as a 45-year-old guy? I know how to make Bob, who is feeling scared and frustrated about jumping out and starting his own business, I know how to make him feel happy. Bob, the 45-year-old guy, put a blindfold on, throw darts. I don't know how to make him happy. All right? Now, final piece. Do you have any creative ideas? Stuff you've seen when you talk to your customer, Bob, the 45-year-old guy. Is there a metaphor that you use? Hey, Bob, you know, this is a metaphor. It's like going from a cocoon to a butterfly. It's kind of scary because you've got to be dormant for a while, but then you come out and you go, wow, this is so much better. I use that metaphor. Clients love it. Tell that to the designer. You're not telling them what to do, but you're seeding ideas with them that might come back to you in very surprising ways. All right, so that is idea number 1 on how to close the brand gap. In short, what you're doing when you're creating a creative brief to work with a creative and you are the entrepreneur, instead of telling them what to do, You are talking about how you want the consumer to feel. You're talking about what your competition is doing, what you think is right and wrong about what they're doing. You're talking about metaphors that work, that seem to work for you. All right? Now, second thing I want to talk about. Switching roles. The first way to switch a role is if you're going to brief a designer and they say, okay, you want me to do your website? All right, what do you want it to be? You go, you know what I want it to be? I want it to be you talking to my customers and asking them what they think is really important. Whoa, there's a departure. You're asking the creative to jump over to the analytical side. And let me tell you, it is a very, very good thing because a lot of creatives are wound tight in their own little cocoon, thinking their creative thoughts and never getting outside to smell reality. So getting a creative on the other side, forcing them to look at your customers and relate to your customers and hear the language they use and see the stuff that they like, I can tell you it's going to make them wake up, and it'll probably make your relationship a whole lot healthier. So that's how you get the one brain to cross over to the other brain side. And my final piece of advice for you, and this is one of my favorite pieces of advice, it's getting the analytical side to jump over to the creative side. And the way we do that is super simple. This is a pad of paper. This is a Sharpie pen. You take your Sharpie pen and you draw a box. And this box is your ad or your website or your piece of communication. And you, as the entrepreneur, need to jump to the creative side and create what I call an ad-like object. An ad-like object is on purpose done with a Sharpie pen and a piece of cheap paper because it is just a thought. It is a visual and a headline. And it can be done, and it could look that ugly. The point is to try and get what's in your analytical brain into a creative landscape, an ad-like object. This is not an ad that's ever going to run, but if you're sitting with a designer and you go, I want it to be more juicy. The designer goes, what the hell is juicy? You go, well, here's a picture. Here's a square. This is an ad-like object. A visual of a butterfly from a cocoon, and it says, this is how you wish you would feel going into your new job, like a butterfly. That's an ad-like object. That is perfectly good ad-like object. The designer goes, oh, really? Is that how? And what the designer is doing, it's logging in their brain going, oh, I'm starting to see some fundamental, foundational, creative ideas happen here. This is kind of interesting. I wonder where this could go. And what will happen is they will take this scrap of paper, hang it on the wall, and start like a jazz saxophone player, start to riff around it. And you know what's cool about it? Is when they come back to you with their idea, this will be the foundation, and they will have taken it up 10 levels. But this will be the foundation, so you go, ah, that works. You listen to me. And the designer goes, ah, that works. It gave me something good to start with. So there you go. The brand gap, the gap between strategy and creativity. The way to close it is to rethink the way you do briefs, to do a little job switching, take the analytical person, put them in the creative role by doing ad-like objects, take the creative person, put them in the analytical role by exposing them to customers. That's all I got for today. I hope you have a terrific weekend. On Monday, we got another great show. And again, 2 great guests next week happening on Tuesday and Thursday. If you know entrepreneurs who need branddiyGroup.com, tell them to join up. Membership continues to rise. I'm super stoked about that. Hope you all have a terrific weekend. Do some great work. See ya.